With that, it's my pleasure to thank Linda Morgan Clement, the Julie Esch Hurvis Dean of Spiritual and Religious Life and Chaplain to the University, along with Katie Mueller, class of 2020, one of our newest alumni and current graduate student at the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago, for your willingness to be a presenter in this new forum. If you have any questions during the presentation, please submit them via the chat function. We'll have time for both Linda and Katie to answer your questions at the end of the presentation. With that, it is my pleasure to turn things over to Katie and Linda.
Thank you, Matt. That's wonderful. Katie, I'm so excited to be able to present today with you. One of the great pleasures of having crossed my 4-year mark here at Lawrence is that I now have alumni that I have known since they came to Lawrence. We're going to talk today a little bit about Taizé, which is something that Katie and I have collaborated on, wrestled with, and learned from for the past 4 years. Katie served for 3 of her years at Lawrence as the Taizé intern, which was a paid position where she went far above and beyond of what was expected. Why Taizé? Why today? Taizé was founded with 2 main aims. The first was to live in communion with God through prayer, and the second was to be a leaven of peace and trust in the midst of the human family. It was founded in the midst of World War II. Sometimes today, I think we feel like we may have found ourselves in the midst of another world war. The stresses, the trauma, the anxiety, the questions, and perhaps the hope and the discoveries we have in common with Taizé. Even before we knew where we would be today, we understood that we have a world that is increasingly complex. Let me give you a little bit of background about Taizé itself so you understand the context of what we're talking about. In 1940, 25-year-old Roger, the son of a Protestant pastor, was recovering from tuberculosis, and the war was beginning to unfold. He was determined that even with his illness and his youth, he would be able to assist people impacted by World War II. Borrowing a small amount of money, he purchased an abandoned house and outbuildings in the Burgundy region of France and founded a sanctuary community for wartime refugees that included both Jews and later German POWs. I have to mention his sister Genevieve, who joined him, who fed them simple soup and helped provide hospitality for the women and children. During the war, they had to disband the community several times, but they always returned to their beloved Taizé. In 1949, Roger took vows and established a Protestant monastic community that followed the rules of Saint Benedict. At this point, he became known as Brother Roger. The core practices of that community have been care for the very poor, ecumenical unity, silence and simple chant, and simple living. Over the years, the community has grown and now includes both Protestant and Roman Catholic brothers of over about 100 people who come from 30 countries around the world. It is a fully self-sustaining community that does not accept donations or inheritances. Anything given to the community is given back to the very poor. And as a concrete sign of their solidarity, some of the brothers now live among the most oppressed and poorest people in the world, living and working in Africa, Asia, and North and South America. Beginning in 1950, young people began to find their way to Taizé in ever-increasing numbers. There they joined the community's daily rhythms and activities. In 1978, the community launched something called the Pilgrimage of Trust on Earth, which involved them going out to create mass gatherings of young people and to visit every continent. In May 2013, one of these was held at the Red Shirt Table on the Pine Ridge Lakota Indian Reservation. There, over 500 pilgrims from throughout North America and others from as far away as Finland, Germany, France, and Austria were joined by many Native Americans and other local people. All 7 of the reservations in the state of South Dakota were represented. Today, Taizé is one of the world's most important sites of Christian pilgrimage. Each year, tens of thousands of young pilgrims flock to the small village of Taizé in central France. The Sisters of St. Andrew, an international Catholic community, was founded 7 centuries ago. It includes Polish, Ursuline sisters, and Sisters of St. Vincent de Paul, and they take on some of the tasks of welcoming the young people to Taizé. When I was at the College of Worcester, we often held Taizé services with our Roman Catholic community, and one of my favorite services there was our Ash Wednesday service, which began at midnight on the Tuesday before Ash Wednesday, involved 50 or 60 of our emerging adults, and included Taizé services. When I arrived at Lawrence, one of the women that I met early on was Gabby. She had traveled to Taizé and was doing a senior project looking at Taizé and Iona. Gabby became a mentor to me and is, I think, on this call. So, hey, Gabby, thanks for being with us and beginning this journey. Her love for Taizé and for music began a partnership with St. James Episcopal Church on the corner. Gabby was convinced, as was I, and our many others, that Taizé has a unique role to play in the spirituality of our world today. And clearly it reaches young adults from across the countries. The vision that we had together that began to unfold was to create an intergenerational, opening and accepting worshiping community. We worked with the Episcopal Church to write a grant, and when Gabi graduated, we put out the call for new interns. Katie and Sadie Hennon answered that call. In the process, we worked together to develop our list of favorites. We changed and focused our vision for what Taizé at Lawrence would be. And then Memorial Presbyterian Church joined us, and we began to add our 3rd site. So today, the worship services for Taizé happen on a regular basis, intergenerationally. And when we're able, we gather for a simple meal of soup and salad. It is a welcoming and encouraging community that invites students from diverse backgrounds and fluid spiritualities to come together in silence, in reflection, and to share simple chanted music. We want to give you a taste of Taizé so that not only will you hear about it, but have a moment to reflect deeply. Katie will lead us in this section.
Yes, thank you, Linda. And thank you for that beautiful story of Taizé, both historically and on our Lawrence campus. I am going to lead us in what we like to call a taste of Taizé, just so you can get a sense for some of what this service has to offer and some of what's been going on for the last 3 years on our college campus. So I invite you into this space to experience a little bit of this Taizé. We're going to start with a chant, and you can feel free to sing along in your homes or wherever you are, or just to listen. Then there will be a moment of silence with a reading, and then we'll finish with one chant where you are also invited to sing and to listen. So thank you.
When
Perhaps the world ends here, by Joy Harjo. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women. At this table, we gossip. Recall of enemies and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh at us with our poor, falling down selves as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating the last sweet bite.
Again, all are welcome to chant along with me or listen. Thank you, everyone, for trying that little taste of Tizay. I hope it was good. At this point, I'm going to move forward and share a bit about my work personally that I've done with Tizay, and how the work Linda and I have done along with so many others has sort of shaped the way we view this community. And before I start, I want to share a little bit about my story with Tizay and how I got here and following Gabi along in this path with others. So, hello, as Linda said, I am Katie, as that was introduced, and I'm currently a seminarian at the Lutheran School of Theology in Chicago. And growing up in a very old school church as a queer woman was very confusing for my faith. And there were so many times along the way where I was just searching for some religious community where I felt like my convictions, my feelings, but also my doubt and my pain that I had felt growing up could be honored in a religious space. So as I begin talking today, I want to emphasize that regardless of where you see yourself religiously and your own affiliations, I think there's so much that we can learn from this Tizay community. I can share a story that the first time I went to a Tizay service after getting this job with Linda, I just sat in the pews and I cried because I was terrified that I felt seen in a religious space, that all my questions and all my joys could be validated. I remember going home that evening and calling all my friends over to my dorm, and we sat around not doing homework and we drank tea together. And we would try to do that every other night since we had a Tizay service for the next 3 years. And I think we are all in this time of pandemic searching for who we can drink our tea with, for our communities in this time of change. So I believe that Tizay has this capability through its ever-changing and expressive use of ritual to be a necessary way we understand ourselves and we understand our community. And when I think of the Tizay community that formed at Lawrence, the first thing that comes to mind, which Linda already talked about, which is that this is an intergenerational community. And there is so much potential within that, with having an intergenerational community. And Linda, you can move on to the next slide to talk about that a little bit. So yeah, like many different groups of worship, the Tizay community at Lawrence was intergenerational, meaning that there are Appleton community members coming together in a consistent way with Lawrence students. And first off, that is a great opportunity. It's not all the time on a college campus you get to see that kind of dynamic and that kind of community grow. But we had one, and I'm very grateful for that, because I got to see people of different backgrounds sharing food together, sharing worship together, and getting to know each other when maybe they might not have met otherwise. There was also a part of me from a religious studies standpoint that was super fascinated by this community, because with this growth of backgrounds also brought various religious perspectives. And I can illustrate this in one way. So say after a service, I was sitting at dinner with a group of people in the Tizay community. I turned to an Appleton community member to my side and I asked, hey, like, what brings you here? What's your background? What did you know about Tizay before coming to this? And if it was an Appleton community member, they would usually very succinctly look at me and say, well, I'm a Presbyterian and I've done Tizay and it's an important part of my faith. That would be that. It would be great, and that would be that. And then I would turn to a college student sitting next to me and I'd be like, what about you? What brings you here? And you just see fear in their eyes. And they'd be like, oh, well, no, I'm not religious, or I'm spiritual, or I was raised Catholic, but I'm not that. Maybe I'm Jewish, maybe I'm Buddhist. I don't really know. And suddenly I realized, wow, we have this community where there's great religious certainty, great religious, like, this is who I am, this is my identity, and this is why I'm here at this service, sitting right next to a perspective that's like, I don't know why the heck I'm here, I don't know what my identity is, but here I am anyway. And this led to me really coming to terms with what my senior research capstone topic would be, which we can look at the next slide, which focused on this question, primarily on these emerging adults who are expressing this, like, I'm not religious sensibility, which was, well, if you're telling me you aren't religious, like, why the heck are you coming to this religious service religiously? What's that all about? And so I sat down with 5 students who were attending these services and fit this description. And we did some in-depth interview about what it was their religious background, what is their spiritual narrative, and how does Taizé fit into how they see themselves. And we can look at the commonality I found really well on the next slide, which was all of these 5 students expressed a great deal of what we could call spiritual fluidity. And what spiritual fluidity means is that for these 5 students, one religious identity is not cutting it at all. They are finding community beyond denomination, as this first quote implies. They are finding community and religious fulfillment in a variety of communities, expressions, and ritual. And you could say, wow, that's beautiful, and it is. And at the very same time, this realization of spiritual fluidity can be quite stressful for people, because it also means that we don't have the language to articulate how they identify. We don't have a word to summarize all of that fluidity. It's not that you can just throw out at the dinner table when I ask. So this is creating great stress for these young people because they don't want to feel boxed in by religion. They experience religion in all these ways. And on top of that, there was also this added layer of stress to many of the stories I heard through these interviews, because many of these young people came from religious backgrounds where either they felt like they didn't have religion growing up and therefore weren't religious enough to even start being religious, or they had felt hurt, even traumatized, left out of their religious background on account of various different parts of their own personal lives. Yet in that pain and in that need to heal, these young people were finding themselves stressed out because they were seeking healing, not outside of religious communities, but within religion itself, which leads to a great amount of stress of how do I do that safely? How do I engage with these communities that might have hurt me or that I don't know a lot about in a way that makes me feel safe and seen? Many of them spoke to feeling like religion and worship is an experiment, like they're never actually engaged fully in a place of worship. They're taking notes, they're observing, they're making sure that they are safe. So how is Taizé becoming this place where the stress isn't at the forefront of their mind? And we can look at the next slide, because I find that when I was sitting with these interviews more, doing more research and reading, what it was all coming back to was that Taizé was acting as this source of community and feeling seen through the use of song and silence. And I believe these 2 things are very powerful lessons that we can think about as we contemplate how we make our own communities, both religious and non-religious, a place that is welcoming to all different backgrounds. So first, I want to talk about song and music and how it is utilized throughout Taizé, which can be seen on the next slide. So music is something that throughout all of the interviews I led was talked about extensively for a very long time in most cases. It wasn't something I brought up. We just ended talking a lot about music. For most of the people I interviewed who had experienced either religious pain or trauma, they described music as a sort of anchor in their faith, as a way that they were able to get back in to their practices without feeling threatened, without feeling harmed. So music in that way is very powerful because it's giving these people an avenue to reconnect with something they deeply care about, but don't know how to relate to in a way that makes them feel safe. And we can talk even more specifically about, well, how is the specific music in Taizé functioning within this way? And what I want to emphasize in this case is that, as you noticed in our own taste to Taizé, the music we play is chant. And it is text repeated over and over again. I actually have no idea how long I'll repeat a chant when I'm in real life with people, because it's all based off of the energy of the group. What they give me is what I'll keep doing. And what happens in this way is that if you're able to repeat text over and over again, you bring whatever you want to that space. You can hum, you can listen, you can harmonize, you get all of this autonomy, which makes someone feel safe with how they interact with this ritual. And these chants themselves, it's not like they're secularized. Like the chant that we sang, Veni Sancte Spiritus, that comes probably before the 12th century in Christian heritage. It was probably a part, I think, of the Catholic liturgy and Pentecost by the 15th century. These are words that have really rich history to Christian theology and Christian heritage. Yet it's not It's not throwing that off for these young students who are seeking safety within their faith, because they're allowed through this music to interact with it the way they choose. And this music on top of that, for a school like Lawrence, where we have a huge conservatory culture, the music is not about being perfect, unless we define that perfect as wholeness. The goal of this chant music is not to hit all the right notes, but to be a community and to find that community through song. This opens up opportunities for people to interact with rituals they are familiar with these songs and with these words in whatever way they seem fit, whether they feel confident in their faith or whether they are struggling to understand their relationship to their faith, or some mixture of the two. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the use of silence in Taizé and why this is also a powerful form of creating community in Taizé, which can be seen on the next slide. I think that we are all craving stillness, like this quote from my interview communicates. But we are just like really bad at admitting that. In this time of pandemic, I'm not sure about y'all, but I just feel like I'm constantly being told, just push forward, that every part of my body just wants to sit, and how we don't know what's going to happen. And that was what happens in Taizé. When we're not singing, we're usually sitting in silence. And I think we are all searching for that, but it's uncomfortable to admit that we need this silence. We need this stillness. It's a wonderful form of community building in Taizé because it doesn't ask you to confess a creed. It doesn't ask you to bring forth a certain knowledge of, do I stand at this one time? Do I sit at another? It doesn't ask you to know the words to every piece of liturgy. All you need to do to be present in Taizé is to show up and to be quiet. And with that, you can bring whatever you want into your silence, whether that be spiritual fluidity, whether that be certainty in your faith, whether that be confusion, doubt, joy, grief, it's all welcome. And what I find beautiful about this use of stillness is that what we see then is someone who might feel really strong in their faith, sitting right next to someone who maybe in another context would not feel safe interacting with this other person. So there is this opportunity to form a bridge of communication, of understanding that has its roots in first establishing a need for silence and a need for stillness. So in closing, I want to emphasize that whether or not you rush off to your nearest virtual Zoom community for Taizé at this point in time, I have a hope that for all of us, we are able to find these communities where we are able to embody uncertainty, where we are able to bring whatever we need to bring into our religious spaces, into our relationships. I think Taizé is a form of religious community that shows that both the certainty and joy and conviction of our faith is just as necessary as our fluidity, as our doubts, as our concerns. And what I hope we begin to learn is that we are bodies that are comprised of both. We are not all wholly certain or uncertain. We are some confusing mixture of the two. Taizé gives you that space through engaging with ritual in a new way, through sharing silence, to contemplate how we are embodying both uncertainty and great joy. Because the future of our world is not going to be wholly bad or wholly good, but some combination, terrifyingly so, of the two. So I hope that for us, we may find those ways, our communities, to share our tea with, to share our joy with, our sorrow and our uncertainty. In practicing that within ourselves, my hope is that through communities like Taizé, we may walk forward into unknowing with greater joy, understanding our grief, but trusting that we have communities that see us for who we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. That was amazing. So I hope that all of you out there in Zoom land are really jealous that this is what we get to do together here at Lawrence these days. It's one of many things, but the partnership that we've been able to have with All Saints and with Memorial Presbyterian Church and across the generations of students from many, many different backgrounds has really shaped our Taizé community here. So I think, Katie, are we ready to take questions?
Oh yes, we are.
Okay.